What's up, y'all? It's Matt here again, coming at you with another book review today. If you're new around here, on this channel, I'll do a lot of reviews of the books that I'm reading, talking about the plots and the philosophical elements of them. I'll talk about some of the things that I'm writing about on Substack, or the things that I've found useful in my life thus far and trying to grow spiritually and intellectually and physically as a young man in today's world. So, without any further ado, we can get into today's book. So, I just finished The Crossing by Cormac McCarthy. That is book 2 of his Border trilogy. And I gotta tell you, this one is similar but very different. And so, it's hard to say that it's better or worse than All the Pretty Horses. I don't think there is a better or worse when it comes to Cormac McCarthy. They're all kind of their own thing. And by the title of this video, you can tell that The Crossing is the philosophical, anchor of his Border trilogy. And so this book takes place a few years before the events of All the Pretty Horses, so that puts the protagonist here, Billy, as older than John Grady from the last book. So when this book begins, it's probably 1939, maybe 1940. This is in New Mexico. Pretty close to the Mexico border, but these distances, they don't really tell you. He doesn't tell you in the book how far they are, but you can guess by some of the writing sequences about how far it is. So Billy Parham is the main character here, and him and his younger brother Boyd, who's about 13 or so, live on a cattle ranch in New Mexico. And when the book starts out, it's him, his younger brother, and his mother and his father. And there's a couple families that live in the surrounding area that, in really rural culture, your neighbor may be 5 miles away, and you may ride over there once a week and just holler at him on the porch and just see what's going on. So that's kind of the landscape of The Crossing at the beginning. Clearly it's called The Crossing because there are not one, not two, but there are 3 crossings of the New Mexico border by Billy throughout the book. And so what precipitates these things? Well, the first and really the anchor of part 1 of this book is that there's a wolf who's kind of marauding some of the cattle on Billy's ranch. So this wolf is one of them, one only. Wolves are very opportunistic hunters, and they're very intelligent too. He does a great job, Cormac McCarthy, of distinguishing the intelligence of a wolf from that of just the yammering coyotes that kind of go off in the night and kind of scatter when there's a light or when there's a human nearby. These wolves are that you don't even know there's a wolf there until you find the dead cow a couple days later. So obviously, in a world where every pound of beef is $1 on in your family's bank account, every cow that goes down is putting you closer and closer to going in the negative financially for the year. So it's imperative that you catch this wolf quickly. So that's kind of the impetus of the first 120 pages or so, is Billy goes around and seeks the people that can help him do that, be it with traps and with, scents and things like that can lure the wolf in. And that brings me to my next point, that this book is the philosophical, anchor of the Border trilogy, because I've discovered that Cormac McCarthy uses a wise man trope, but he inserts them meaningfully throughout his books, or woman in some cases. And so the first wise man that he encounters in this book is an old Mexican man who speaks no English, and he rides 12 hours straight to get to this guy's house and ask him about catching the wolf. And, through a conversation with this man, the man pretty much says, you can't catch a wolf by your traditional utilitarian Western means, if you will, lay trap, put bait in trap, and wolf steps in it. It's almost, he kind of speaks in metaphors here, but he just tells Billy that they have to meet in the wild, and it's hard to describe. It's, again, that's one of the beauties of McCarthy's works, is you really can't describe his stuff very well. You have to just experience it. But he travels and meets the sage, and there's several, really wise and profound quotes that take place in this first encounter with the wise man. So he goes back, and sure enough, he kind of, I picture it like Luke lifting the X-wing out of the swamp in Dagobah. Like he encounters the wolf and catches her, and when he's on his way back, he decides to, instead of going home and saying, "Hey, Dad, hey, family, caught the wolf," he just goes straight to Mexico with it. And you kind of wonder why that is. And that's really one of the big defining characteristics of Billy is his, whereas John Grady will, be a bull in a china shop and he will charge in for what is right and what is just, Billy will often be at a fork in the road and have the option of fleeing or fighting, and he will flee. That's something that kind of develops out through the book, and I'm not going to go into too much detail so as to spoil the book, but Billy elects just to go to Mexico. His family doesn't know where he is. He just ups and goes. So while he's in Mexico this first time, some things take place, and before he comes back, he encounters his second wise man, and this is an old Mormon runaway. I don't know how to describe him. He's an old man. He lives in a completely abandoned town. I mean, the town was destroyed by a terremoto, which I didn't look it up. I look up a lot of Spanish words, but I also know a good bit. But I assume from context this means earthquake, or terror. So there was, this town is completely abandoned except for this one old Mormon guy that lives in a house with a cat. And he kind of goes through a, spiritual wise man sequence with Billy. Tells the story of an old man who, lost everything in his life that was important to him. And then he spent the rest of his life just trying to find a way to, curse God. And there's a lot of really deep philosophical discussions in this 50-page sequence or so. And so after that, Billy heads back into the States, and him and his brother Boyd come back to Mexico looking for some horses of theirs. So that's what kind of sets the final, third of this book in motion, is this quest for Billy and Boyd to retrieve these horses. So you'll notice I didn't explain where the horses came from or why they're there. That's part of the plot that I don't want to spoil. So Billy and Boyd's adventures in Mexico make up the, back half to back third of this book. And it's here, there's not a lot of dialogue in this book between Billy and Boyd. A lot of their conversations span maybe half a page to one page. So this is not like a dialogue rich, philosophical book in that manner. A lot of the philosophical weight of this book comes from these wise man encounters. And so I've covered 2 of the wise man encounters so far. We have a final one that comes towards the end. And this is when, some more things happen that I won't spoil, but Billy encounters a blind man and his wife that live kind of on a very small, I wouldn't even call it a hacienda, not even that big, just like a very small little farm. And this man was blinded in the revolution and kind of wandered the land. And there's a lot of, really weighty philosophical topics in this, 30-page sequence or so. And so, again, he crosses back into New Mexico, comes back again one final time for a reason I shall not discuss what it is. But in those crossings, each time he comes back, he's a little bit more empty emotionally. So a lot of the themes of this book, especially as they concern Billy Parham here, are wandering, the lack of a place, which includes people, and the refusal or the decision to not face things head on. So you'll see moving into the third book of the Border Trilogy what Cormac McCarthy's doing here. And I'm reading the third book now. And I can't tell you what he does yet because I myself don't know. But it's very interesting to see the juxtaposition of John Grady, who was almost killed because he was going after the rich hacendado's daughter. Not an intelligent thing to do, but John Grady was like, damn it, I love her. Didn't work out, but not because he didn't try. Versus Billy, who, kind of like the wolf at the beginning of the book, he will kind of stalk around the axis of what he needs to deal with, but he'll kind of shy away when the time comes to do things sometimes. And he lives very nomadically through the course of this book. And at times you can tell that that weighs on him. So it's interesting to see how the combination of these two characters in book 3 will pan out, because I am very intrigued. I loved The Crossing. I think that some of the philosophical sequences in this book they're really like up there, and I'm not, it's different categories, if you will, but I mean the philosophical weight of The Crossing is on par, if not greater than in some aspects, than some of your, Dostoevsky sequences or some of your Lord of the Rings, punchlines. And what I like about McCarthy's style is he doesn't tell you dogmatically or absolutely. What I like about Cormac McCarthy's philosophy is that a lot of his philosophy is not a dogmatic X or Y philosophy. It's a very fluid, very defined by the natural world and natural cycles type of philosophy. It's almost like you can't do anything about some things. You just have to deal with them. And I think that that's something that is a very distinctly American, very frontier type of philosophy that, has only been born and hashed out and is still continuing to be hashed out in our lifetime. So, kind of a winding, meandering review here. I don't want to make this channel and my discussions of books too formulaic, and so I hope that you guys are enjoying this format that I'm going through here. Hope you learned something about this book, and if you haven't decided to pick it up yet, you probably would if you read book 1 of this series, but in case you're just, tangentially looking at The Crossing, I would definitely say 1, read All the Pretty Horses before you read it, but 2, definitely pick it up. I think this is the Philosopher's Western, undoubtedly. So, yeah, give it a read. Thanks, y'all, for your time today, and I will catch y'all next time.